The second wave of the COVID pandemic hit the country by surprise. The government, in fact, has been criticized for its lack of preparedness and for the fact that it had done nothing to gear up for this phase of the pandemic. However, the government has now been talking about a possible third wave, has indicated it in press conferences, in communications to various government departments and to state governments, and in a fresh development has now told pharma companies that they should prepare for the third wave and they should have a stock of key COVID drugs ready for as and when needed. Himani Chandra, who tracks health for the print, who tracks pharma for the print, is with us in this episode of Government Matters. She's in fact done a story for the print. So do log on to our website, theprint.in, to read her story. Himani, so what is this communication that the government has sent out to pharma companies, and what kind of key COVID drugs are we talking about?
Ruhi, this all started with the kind of rumors that Department of Pharma was hearing about the lesser quantity of inventories with the pharma companies. The concern first was flagged after the cargo flights were suspended from China, because they bring majority of the raw materials for most of the critical drugs. In fact, most of the critical key COVID-19 drugs as well. So the concern was that companies are unable to produce good quantity of medicines. Apart from that, the factories were also unable to run on the full capacities, considering workers were ill and unable to come to the units, and all of those concerns were there. So yesterday, Department of Pharma held a meeting with all the pharma companies, the lobbies, basically to communicate that we need to create a stock in next 2-3 months for the possible third wave, considering that this time there were a lot of shortages, and even social media was flooded with so many requests about remdesivir and then tocilizumab, now amphotericin. So the point was that, because this time the remdesivir production was not up to the mark, and then the companies were told to gear up and increase the production, their concerns were raised and all those were sorted. So this basically was, they are just trying to do the control the crisis that had already appeared this time.
So Himani, is there any indication from the government on when the possible third wave that it's talking about could be? By when should these companies, is there a rough time frame, ballpark time frame by when these companies should have these stocks ready?
Yeah, they have said that in the next 2-3 months, we should have the inventory ready so that we have enough of the drugs in place, including all the non-COVID drugs as well. For instance, paracetamol, azithromycin, which are also used in other illnesses, but also the COVID drugs such as favipiravir, HCQ, tocilizumab, remdesivir, dexamethasone, ivermectin, and all these kind of key drugs.
Right. Okay. So let me first take this question from Dilip Sinha. This has come on Facebook. How long will this continue? So I think Dilip's larger question is a question that all of us are asking. The first wave got over, then the second wave hit us. Now second wave is still on. I mean, it's really bad outside even now, and we are already preparing for the third wave. How long, Himani? I mean, when would there be a time when we wouldn't have to do a government matters on COVID?
I wish I knew this, Ruhi, but of course I think this third wave point is coming because now the cases of the second wave have started coming down, and we are expecting cases to be really low by, to witness a steep fall by July. So I think that because the government is now presuming that wave 2 is now under the control, whatever was supposed to happen has already happened. We have already hit the peak. Probably they are assuming that without considering that deaths are still, the number is still going up. And in fact, today we have hit the highest number of deaths in last 24 hours. But I think they're presuming that we are almost, we have passed COVID phase 2's peak, and probably we are looking at now preparing for the peak 3 of phase 3.
The deaths right now would, of course, perhaps correlate to cases from 15 days ago. So
right. It's a fortnight. Right.
Okay, Soham Bhattacharya, again on Facebook, do you have to pay them in advance? I think this means whether the government would pay pharma companies in advance to stock up.
No. So government will not pay in advance. They will just, because companies will get their revenue by the sales of these drugs. For instance, Favipiravir, Fabiflu, which is Glenmark's drug which is given to the COVID patients, is the top sold brand for last 1 month, and the revenue for the drug has increased by more than 600% in last 1 month. So all the revenues, all the money that company generates via sales, it's their own. So government is not going to pay them anything.
Right. Himani, the fear is that once you have enough supply of these drugs and if they're let out in the market, then there is hoarding that happens. We've seen that even in the first phase, there was a lot of hoarding of key drugs. Possible this time around, possible that it would happen again. So what is the government doing to contain that, to address that?
Yeah, in fact, that's a very important point, Truhi. Hoarding, and in fact, this time also we have seen remdesivir and tocilizumab in black marketing. And last year also, in fact, we also did a story that remdesivir last year was sold in market around 63,000 per vial. So, of course, yesterday also, Pharma Secretary S. Aparna, she has also told the companies that they have flagged this concern to Drug Controller General of India, under whom the state drug controller officers are, and basically it's their job to look into the market and control the black marketing and hoarding. So we are told that those inspectors are in place and they will be raiding and doing their own inspections.
Right. In fact, the questions coming in from K. Shantaram on Twitter and Indranil Mitra on YouTube were also about black marketing. So you've already taken that. Narsimha Murthy, when there's no clue about the second wave, why divert onto the third and fourth or umpteenth wave? So I think there are concerns around the fact that the government barely seems to have a grip over its management of the current wave, and it's already talking about the next wave. What is happening to the current wave? What is the vaccination status? Isn't that what the government should focus on?
Right. So, this time the government was not prepared. The allocation part, it was because we have designed this strategy this time only in the second wave. In the first wave, it was the companies who were responsible to distribute these drugs. So these are not the drugs which are available to the retail chemists. So these are the drugs which are dispersed via the distributors, the drug distributors. But this time the problem was that via drug distributors, this was going into the black marketing, or people were just hoarding it. So this time the government, maybe it was very late, but still government designed the strategy that they will procure the drugs from the pharma companies. They will take care of the stocks. And in fact, I was told that there were some drug inspectors that were placed on the sites where remdesivir was being produced, because the demand was so high and there was a massive shortage in the market. So government took the direct charge from the pharma companies. If Cipla is selling remdesivir, government will have the control of all the production units, the amount of units produced per day, per month, and all those kind of data points. And government took the charge of distributing, allocating all these stocks to the states. This is how the government came into the role. And probably I'm assuming that they are planning that from if the next wave comes, the third waves come, the government is ready with this probably strategy that from now on they will take charge of these stocks and inventories to probably reduce the black marketing, hoarding, and overcharging.
Right. Okay, Nikhil Deo, in case India's population is vaccinated, then can India avoid a third wave like the USA? So is the answer to avoiding a third wave, or at least the intensity of a third wave, vaccinating more and more people? Is that possible before we hit the so-called third wave?
Of course, vaccination is of course the answer, but we don't know that, what is the time period that government is expecting third wave to hit in. We are not sure, because yesterday also Adar Poonawala tweeted that considering the population of India, we are not going to vaccinate the entire country in next 3-4 months. So vaccination drive is also going to take time. And we are not yet sure that when third wave will hit in. And we are also seeing the surge in the mutant, so we never know that what new mutant hits in at what time. So I think it's better to prepare ourselves at least with the key COVID drug stocks in place, and of course with the aggressive vaccination drive.
Right. Okay. This is a question from Sankalp. Is the lack of transparency making the situation look much worse than it actually is on ground? Perhaps the situation is improving. So, the government, the problem, Imani, has been since last year the lack of transparent communication. There is a lot more that is hidden than what is let out. Is that continuing to be a problem?
Yes, that continues to be a problem. When something hits a peak, then government comes out with the data or clarity on that particular point. When initially you keep asking for details or data, they don't release it. For instance, now when, everyone has seen the shortage of tocilizumab, remdesivir, and now amphotericin, which is a drug for mucormycosis, which is black fungus. Now government has rolled out, they have given out the details that these states are getting these many of stocks. I think in the initial days only, if they start doling out these data, the confusion on the shortages, and probably the companies will be, it will be more clear to the companies that, how much production they need to ramp up. So I think clear communication and transparency is a problem.
Right. Okay. This question is from Kanish Gehlot. Do we have enough research data as to what methods and medicines will be used? Because it's being predicted that the third wave will impact children more. So it's, this conversation around the third wave impacting children more, and what medicines would then be used.
So the medicines on children, we clearly don't have that medical protocol right now, because the treatment protocol we have from Ministry of Health, ICMR, still does not include anything specific about children. Till now, we have not been seeing severe cases or even moderate cases more in the children. It remains more or less like a fever and a cough kind of a disease in children. So there is no particular medicine that has been prescribed under the national treatment protocol. If we come on that stage, probably we have to look around. For instance, we are hearing that that children are getting COVID in other countries, and maybe we need to look around and understand the global trend and what medicines they are being prescribing.
Right. In fact, Parv Arora also had a question about whether the third wave will be more dangerous for those under 18. Okay, Himani, so, even in yesterday's Government Matters with Avantika, we had many questions on the DRDO drug on 2DG. And we have questions today as well. So let me read them out to you. One is by Bhaskar D. Is there any information on 2DG's phase 3 trial, efficiency, sample size on which it was tried? And Chirag Gopinath, is DRDO going to share its formula for 2DG to make it commercially available?
So this drug was not approved in India, but it was being experimented on the cancer conditions, on certain cancer conditions. I need to look for the current state of the, if the data has been released for the phase 3. But I understand that government has been clearly promoting it very confidently. So I need to get back with the data on the efficacy.
Right. Himani, so now the pharma companies have been told to ramp up production, to ramp up stocks. Is there an issue with raw materials, or is that sorted on for the pharma companies?
So companies say that the issue with the raw materials still remains, because the prices basically remains an issue. And even the story that we have did today and in the yesterday meeting, the companies have highlighted their concern. We did a story that the price rise in the raw materials is up to 200% in certain drugs. So that remains, and because that discourages manufacturers from making certain products, because there is a ceiling price above which you cannot charge the consumer. So the product becomes very expensive for the manufacturer to make, because they cannot increase the MRP accordingly. So this issue was raised yesterday also, to which the companies have been ensured that government will look into it and look at absorbing these price rises. But the other expenses, for instance, the packaging and all of that, they say that costs are also going up. And raw material, sometimes, the materials, it takes a lot of time from China to come in, because our demand has escalated multifold. Right. So that is the concern, that while imports are not coming at the speed that are required for Indian market right now.
Okay. Mahesh KL, can you explain about the breakthrough infections even after vaccination? So I think there is a concern that vaccination is perhaps not enough, and there are infections that are being reported even on those who have been vaccinated.
So there is no clear data on that as of now. We cannot say that, people who got the first jab or the second jab are getting infected with COVID-19. I think a proper investigation based on the solid data should be done on this. Commenting on this, without certain data points will not be a good idea, because I think vaccines are very important right now, and it is the only answer to eradicate or reduce the reduce COVID-19.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay, I'll take this one last question from Ashish Chavla. It's in fact a very pertinent question. In addition to pharma industries, is the government also talking to medical oxygen suppliers to ramp up production? So besides medicines, the shortage of oxygen, medical oxygen in this wave of the pandemic has really been perhaps the most defining and tragic, headline from this wave. So what is the government doing to address that and to ensure it's not repeated if a third wave were to hit?
Yeah, so Ruhi, the problem this time was that apart from the production of the medical oxygen, the problem was the logistic issue as well. So because even the large hospitals did not have their own oxygen plants at place, or maybe there were some hospitals where the plants were not working despite they had. So government has already given a lot of advisories to increase the manufacturing of medical oxygen, and even there were other companies who had diverted their oxygen, which were used for some other purposes, to divert into the medical to divert them for the medical use. So I think government has taken care of that, the logistical issue and all that. As the cases will go down, I'm sure that part needs to be fixed again.
Right. All right. Okay, Himani, thank you for explaining what the government's communication to pharma companies to ramp up production and stocks of the COVID drugs for a possible third wave means and what it really entails. Thank you so much for watching Government Matters and for sending in your questions. At 7:30 p.m. today, we have our live in Hindi with our editor-in-chief, Shekhar Gupta, in conversation with Abhi Ramanthani. So don't forget to send me your questions for that as well.